Hello everyone, and welcome today to my webinar to show you all about Okta Workflows for customer identity, which is a recent enhancement to the Okta Workflows product that Okta provide, and it's quite a cool thing. So I hope you'll enjoy and also learn something today as well. So, hi everyone, my name's Jamie Turbo. Obviously today's 24th of August. And yeah, I'm a technical consultant here at Somerford. Been working with Okta for a number of years now. Saw Okta Workflows get introduced, seen it grow as well, and obviously here we are today talking about the customer identity element for workflows. So yeah, today in terms of the agenda for this webinar, we're going to be looking at what is meant by customer identity and what that actually means, because obviously if you're not that familiar with the terms, they can be a little bit confusing. So we're going to cover that. Then we're going to talk about just what is Okta Workflows. If you're not actually familiar with Okta Workflows, we're going to talk about that as well. I'm also going to show you a short video during that as well, so you can see how it kind of works, which will be quite cool. And then we're going to be looking at the new enhancements, so what's new, and how can Okta Workflows help with customer identity. We'll look at a few typical use cases that might come up with that, and then at the end we'll just do a quick Q&A. If you've got any questions, please do post them in the chat below, and I will get to those at the end of the webinar. So, customer identity. You might have heard of identity, you might have heard of customer, of course, but what does it mean with customer and identity? So, really, as it says, to be honest with you, it is a profile of your customers or your customer that you manage. So, you might need to do this for different purposes. You might need to, for example, if you've got a website, it could be an e-commerce website, so you might need to store profile information. You might even need to store financial information about a customer to allow them to place orders on your website. For example, with support portal, for example, you might have your customers, and you might need to provide a way for them to submit support cases. So you might have a little portal that they can log into, and again, you might need to have information about them to be able to allow them to do that. Obviously, social media is your typical one as well. So I mean, you've got things like Twitter as well. You might have your social media platform that you're building out, and you might need to again obviously store information about a customer to allow them to obviously interact and use social media. So yeah, as it says here in all of the examples, you have to store and you need to manage customer identity information. And obviously that's not a trivial task in all cases. Obviously you need to build your own platform, registration and login to do that normally. And this is where Okta can come in, and also Okta Workflows as well, as we're going to be discussing more today on this piece. And the customer identity is also known as CIAM, so CIAM, if you've ever come across that. That would be the term that you'll see when discussing customer identity. Cool. And again, these are just some use cases that you might come across. I mean, obviously a lot more as well. I mean, it's just some examples. Again, e-commerce, a portal, or social media. Yeah, those sorts of things really. Web applications, quite common for customer identity. So web apps, maybe just applications as well, to be honest, where your customers might need to log in and do stuff. So that was just a brief introduction to customer identity. We're now going to look at Okta Workflows and just go through what Okta Workflows is. So what is Okta Workflows? So I've just kind of put the description from Okta there, but I'll also explain it in my own terms as well. So what Okta say, Okta Workflows is an interface-driven platform, and it provides the automation of business processes, including things like user provisioning, lifecycle management, and it uses a library of third-party apps and functions to be able to achieve that. So if you know IFT or IFTTT, if this then that, so you might use that to control your smart lights at home, for example. You might do that as an action, say when you arrive home, turn my lights on, or you might say when I get into the office, put my phone on silent. Those sorts of examples, if this then that. Well, this is an if this then that platform for business processes. So you can think of workflows a bit like that, in that it's a if this then do that type platform. And it works using APIs. So if you're familiar with REST APIs and different API solutions that you can use to interact with. You might do this in scripts or Python scripts that you might create, for example. You can use Okta Workflows with all REST APIs, and the benefit of doing that is because many apps today, many SaaS services in particular, have REST APIs available. So if there's a REST API available and a REST endpoints available, you can potentially integrate it with Okta Workflows. And also, Okta Workflows, another benefit is that it's a no-code solution. So if you're not that familiar with coding or you're not that familiar with scripting, you don't really have to know about that. You just need to be able to use Okta Workflows. So the no-code solution makes it more obtainable or I guess learnable, you could say. It just makes it easier to be able to use. So the no-code solution helps with that. And if you're an Okta admin today, then you can get up and running without having a coding background, as it mentions there. So that's really one of the extra benefits too. So that's obviously a good thing. And you're going to see the platform shortly, so you'll see what I mean by that. Cool. So that's the next slide. Cool. So yeah, until now, Okta Workflows is really only available for our workforce identity, and it expanded on and made use possible complex lifecycle processes. So before Okta Workflows was around, in Okta you would have had what's known as LCM or lifecycle management. So when a user joins the company, you can get the user created in the apps that they need access to. So let's say they're in sales and they need access to the CRM. What Okta lifecycle management can do is it can create the user in the CRM automatically, which typically before Okta or even without Okta would be a manual process. You'd have to create the user in your, say, your Active Directory or your directory where you store those users, and then you need to go to the CRM and create them manually as well. Obviously, some apps have AD integration, but not all. So that's, and particularly SaaS services, that's more of a struggle in terms of, obviously, you wouldn't be able to integrate with AD as easily. So that's one of the benefits with Okta and LCM. You can basically just automatically create the users in the apps they need access to. And also when they move or if they leave the company, the opposite as well. So when they leave the company, making sure that the access they have to those apps are removed and also their profiles are removed as well, potentially. So that's what LCM is. But then also you have Okta Workflows. And what does Okta Workflows do? So it expands on LCM. And what I mean by that is it allows complex lifecycle processes to happen. So we're not just creating a user, we're not just deleting a user, we're not just obviously moving a user, we're also doing other things. So some examples, hopefully in the next slide here. So some examples there. So if a user gets unassigned from Box, let's say they left the company, then what we can do, instead of just deleting the user in Box, we can transfer the files to their manager. And then we can also email, just send an email confirming the actions that have taken place to that manager so that the manager is aware of what's happened. Or you could say something very simple here. A user gets activated and they're in a certain department. And then what happens is you can send a message in Slack, welcoming them to them as a new member of the team. So just a very simple example there. We activate the user, we just send a quick message in Slack. And we can do that in Okta Workflows. Instead of just creating a user, we can perform these sometimes quite complex business processes, but we can do it automatically based on an action that happens in Okta. And that action would be the if this action. So user unassigned from Box would be something that you'd go into Okta and you'd unassign them, or in Okta you might activate them, of course, when you're creating them for the first time. And this is powerful because obviously what you couldn't do before in Okta was perform these very specific actions that you need to take. And that didn't always make LCM very, very viable, but Okta Workflows now enables this. So that's quite cool. Cool. So just some of the inner workings, as I mentioned, I think I've mentioned some of this already. Okta Workflows is API driven, so it very much works with REST APIs. There's out-of-the-box connectors available, and they're all available, and they link to different services. using OAuth, token, basic, or none. So those are the type of authentications you can do with those different APIs and those connectors. So obviously, out of the box connectors, they make things easy. You can get started quite quickly. Those connectors have different actions that you can take, so that's really cool. But also, if you find that a connector is not available, then you can have custom API calls as well. So you're not limited to just the out of the box stuff that Okta have been able to integrate. You can use your custom APIs and your custom apps as well potentially, and you can basically just perform your own custom API calls. So those would be using what's known as the HTTP cards, and you can do your different types of HTTP actions. So get, put, post, delete, etc. would all be supported. There is also a form of storage available. There's tables. So if you wanted to store data as a result of running a workflow, you can do that. And there's also full history available. So if there's any workflows that error, so on and if this then that action, there might be an error during that flow, then obviously you can see that and see how they're running, and also debug any errors that come up. But I mentioned that this is an if this then that platform, but if there's other ways you want to trigger a workflow, you can. So you can trigger it from an API endpoint. So that might be something you do in a custom script, or you might just have a URL link that you want to click on to make sure the workflow runs. Or you might just want to run a workflow on a schedule, and you can do that for a day and a time, and repeat that as well. So that's something you can do, and that's just some of the inner workings. And again, there's a video coming up, so you'll be able to see that as well. So I'll just show you this short video. This is from a previous webinar that I did about Okta Workflows in particular. But this is just to show you a bit of a demo, really, of a use case that came up, something that I've already mentioned previously about sending a message into Slack, for example. But this is obviously going to be using Google Chat. So I'll just play this short video. This is just from the middle of a previous webinar. But yeah, again, it will just show you what Okta Workflows looks like and how it kind of works. So that's cool. So I don't know if you can hear the audio from the video, so I'll just kind of commentate over this just for you now. So what we're looking at here is just the workflow that I've created, and this is where I basically a welcome user in Google Chat. And what happens is I'll just go back a bit because I want to just show you the start again. So you can see on the farthest left-hand side here, we've got user created. So this is the if action that we're doing. So when a user is created in Okta, what are we going to do? So the first thing we do is we wait for a minute, and that's just as a grace period. Just something that we decided to put into this workflow. But then we read the user, so we find out what their first name and last name is. And the reason we do that, you'll see later on. If you look at the compose box on the right-hand side, we've got welcome first name, last name. So that's just a message that we're constructing. So we want to get that information about the user. So we do a read user action. We get the assigned user for application. So we're just making sure that they are assigned to Slack or they're assigned to Google. We don't want to post a message to a chat room if they're not actually part of that chat room. So we just check that. And then at the very end here, we do a HTTP post. So this is a custom API call, and this is just a webhook. So if you're familiar with webhooks, that's something we do. We just post a webhook out to Google, and we post our message. So we just say, welcome, say it's John Doe, welcome John Doe to this Google chat room. And you're going to see that happen. So I will see, I talked about it for a bit longer in this webinar. Let's cool, here we go. So we're just going to create the user in Okta now. So this is under the directory. We're creating John Doe. We're signing into G Suite. We're just going to set his password here, of course, so that he can actually log in. And now John Doe is actually created. I think we do just need to activate him. So we can activate him. And now I should switch over to the Google chat room so you can actually see this. So this is our little chat room that we've created. What's happening now, because we've activated the user, we've triggered the workflow as we saw in the first part of the video. So that workflow will now be running in the background. You can see our webhook here that we created, but if you give this a minute, as that workflow runs, we should eventually see a message appear in this Google chat room, and this is basically just a very simple workflow running based using Okta Workflows, and again, all based on an action in Okta, so all automated again. So you can see now that the new message has come up. I'm just going to click on that, and you can see we're welcome John Doe to the Google chat room. Obviously, that message could be anything you want. You could just say, welcome John Doe, here is some information about the company. Could be anything that you might want to post there, but that's a very simple example of a workflow. And here I'm just showing you that you can view the history of the workflow, so you can see all of the in-depth data that you can get out of a workflow and how it's run. So you can see what it's done, you can see it's read the user, you can see it's put the message in, and at the very end it's posted the message. So that's cool. So yeah, that's just a short part of a previous webinar, just to show you how Workflows is and how it works. This webinar is available on YouTube. So at the end of this webinar, I will show you. I will provide a link to that. So if you wanted to watch the whole thing, you can, and that goes in more in depth on other use cases and some more complex examples as well. So if you wanted to see that, there'll be a link at the end of this webinar as well. Cool. So you've just seen what Okta Workflows is, and I've explained a bit about how it works and what it does. So now I'm going to talk briefly about Okta Workflows for Customer Identity, and what that provides and what that brings to the table. So expanding workflows for SIAM. So realizing the power of Okta Workflows, you can now actually save time, not just managing your employee identity, but also managing your customer identities. And again, typical examples here. So you might want to sync your customer identities to a CRM, your marketing tools, for example, maybe to register them as a lead if they're if it's to sign up for something, for example. You might want to kick off some consent and data privacy workflows with third-party providers. Maybe streamline registration. So you might want to put some actions into a registration workflow for the user, so you can do some streamlining and kick off workflows based on that. You might want to use workflows for granting or revoking access to business critical technologies, and that might be custom apps, of course, for example. Something as simple as sending notifications to users or creating reports, you could do as well, or just to replace utility code like lightweight data transformations or filtering. And you can do that with a workflow instead, for example. So those are just some examples that I've, to be honest with you, I've kind of stolen from the Okta website, but they give you some ideas of what you might be able to create. And obviously, Okta Workflows is a completely custom tool. So what workflow you create might not be the same as anybody else, and that's okay. So, I mean, the next slide, I'm just going to show you an example of something that might kick off when a user registers to a website. So they might be registering to your website to sign up for, I don't know, I mean, it could be a webinar just like this one, for example. But yeah, so as a user registers, we're going to show you what happens in Okta Workflows. So in Okta Workflows, what we've got here is on the left-hand side, a user gets created in Okta. So this might be as a result of them registering, the user might get created. So that will then trigger the workflow. We read the user, so we just find out some information about them. So what did they do? Did they consent to our terms and conditions? You can see one of the boxes there in the profile properties on the second column here. You can see consent to terms, so that will just tell us if they've consented to the terms and conditions. That can be important, for example. So we just put out some information about the user. Then in Salesforce, what we do is we just create a record of that user, so who they are, and we just basically just create the record basically. And then also we create the lead in our Marketo platform. So we again put their information in and we create a lead. And then we've also run an extra workflow there. So we just add them to a new user list. And also at the very end there, we add the leads to the list as well at the very end. So again, it's a fairly simple example, this one, but it just shows that you can put in custom logic as a result of a user registering, for example. I mean, you could also put custom logic in as they're logging in. Very simple again. So that's cool. That's one example there that you can see. But what's actually changed about the core functionality? Well, not much, to be honest, and that's not a bad thing. Okta Workflows is powerful, and it can be used to automate any number of types of processes, as long as it has a REST API available, and if this, then that style actions. And to be honest with you, it's never really been limited to just identity management if you really didn't want it to be. But Workflows is absolutely designed for identity, and it works best when you do so. So now with customer identity being available and some out-of-the-box connectors now being available for customer identity use cases, you now have these out-of-the-box connectors and actions that you can now use to start automating your customer processes. So that's cool. So what's actually new? So as I say, there's more connectors now available than ever available. So for tools like HubSpot, Mixpanel, and OneTrust, these might be platforms you use for your customer identity. So they're now available too. Obviously, custom actions are now available. Things like when a user registers or a user logs in, those sorts of actions are available in Okta Workflows now. So you can start using it more for your customer identity. And also, there's also this new templates available and new playbooks. So instead of having to build your workflows from scratch, you can now actually take examples from Okta and immediately use them. So you don't have to build them by yourself. You can base them on a template if you wanted to. So that's cool. So yeah, again, this is just a screenshot of the workflows template and what it looks like. So you can see here some examples here for samples. I mean, obviously, different apps you might want to integrate with. So you have importing users from Google Sheets. Obviously, notify a user when their profile is updated. There's a few here that you can see. And obviously, templates, there's going to be more over time. So obviously, this is a new feature. This is going to obviously continue to grow as more templates are added. You'll be able to search through them, of course. And obviously you might find ones that you're interested in, which is cool. So this is going to make it even quicker to get value. And obviously that's always a good thing. So that's cool. And I think we are actually coming up to the end of the webinar, but I just wanted to show you this is some extra information you can get to. So if you wanted to see our previous webinar on this, this is all about Okta Workflows, really talking into the weeds of it. The future of work, Okta Advanced Lifecycle Management. We go through some more in-depth examples there. So really, this is more focused obviously on the workforce identity side rather than the customer identity side. But there's a full link there. I will, if I can, I will put that in the chat so you've got it. But this webinar will be available after as well on YouTube. So you should be able to see this here. And also, if you just Google that in YouTube, it will come up. So that's cool. Obviously, an Okta blog as well was created based on this new feature. So if you wanted to read more, I could probably go to this link and show you as well. This is a blog that Okta did talking about Okta Workflows now being available for customer identity. So some more information available in this blog as well. Again, it talks about the low code, no code automation, and also gives you some examples here too. And it goes through different examples. Cool. And then also, if you wanted just to read more in depth about workflows and about its capabilities, obviously the Okta documentation is fully available. This talks about all the different, if I can show you somewhere in here, there should be a list of different connectors available. Oh, I can't see that. There we go. It's gonna be this one, isn't it? Yeah, but anyway, this is the documentation for workflows. Obviously, you can see it's quite in depth. I can't actually even find the page I'm looking for at the moment. But yeah, so all the information about Okta Workflows again is available in the docs. So that might be something else you might want to refer to and explore following this webinar. Cool. And that's really it. I know it's quite a short webinar today. If there are any questions, I will be happy to take them now. Please do post them in the chat and I will get to them. Cool. So I do have one question here, just asking about how do I actually get access to workflows. If you have Okta already, Okta Workflows is available as a separate add-on, basically. Obviously, you need lifecycle management as well to use Okta Workflows. But once you do have Okta Workflows, it's just a case of contacting your account manager to see if you can get that feature enabled. And when you do have it enabled, it just appears as an extra button in the admin portal, basically. So you can basically just access it from there and begin using it, of course. Cool. So I think that's it for the questions. So I'll just wrap up, really. Thank you for attending today. I know it's quite a short webinar, but I hope you learned something. Please do refer to the resources that I've provided here for further information on workflows for customer identity and also about workflows itself. It's a very powerful tool and it can really help you manage your identities, whether that's customer identity or even if that's workforce identity. It's a really powerful platform and really does allow much more than was available before in Okta. So that's really cool. But yeah, thank you for your time today and have a good day.